Hello from Brisbane, Australia. My name is Danny Harley, also known as the Kite Tangle, and I'm stoked to welcome you to the Small Plates podcast. Wayne Martin of M3 is standing by with some get real advice for musicians and the people who help them. As this month's featured musical artist, I'm also here to introduce the track that was selected to open this Small Plates episode, Iris. This song started from a vocal sample that I was working with. It went through heaps of different versions. It started off as sort of a commercial track, and then it got a bit underground and then a bit dancey, and now it sort of has all of those elements in it. It took really long to write just because it went through so many versions. It took maybe a year or two to finally land on how it is now. I really like how it builds towards the end. It's something I like to do quite often. And yeah, the track is called Iris. So, welcome again to Small Plates. I'm Danny Harley, also known as the Kite Tangle, and this is Iris.
Got me wondering what you're doing now. What you're doing now. What you're doing now. What you're doing now.
The Kite String Tangle and Iris was the second Australian feature on Small Plates in just a year. Thank you so much, Danny. That song always makes me move. Hey, welcome to Season 1, Episode 112, and Caveat Emptor. My name is Wayne Martin, and I have an extraordinarily long intro today, and for good reason. This is the last of 12 podcasts in our first year of sharing our small plates with you. And so at this notable benchmark, I am compelled to acknowledge and appreciate Desiree, Claudine, Adam, Jared, Ray, and every single artist and manager that has contributed to our first season of Small Plates. I am not a broadcaster or a podcaster by trade. I am not used to speaking to people in this way unless they're in front of me. And so I've been humbled to learn that we have attracted listeners from all over the world as I stumbled through my Virgin podcasting experience, not just in the United States and the United Kingdom as we expected at the outset, but we have amassed subscribers in dozens of countries, some of which I never expected. Iran, India, Honduras, Venezuela, Egypt, Poland, just so many more. And I just shake my head when I see that in just 12 episodes, Small Plates has achieved unanimous 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, which is really surprising because, as I said, I did not know my ass from my elbow when this journey with you started. So everyone else I've just mentioned has held me up as I figured out how to pay some of my good fortune forward with some real talk. I am grateful to the reviewers, listeners, and the subscribers, those of you who have shared Small Plates with others or contacted us directly. I am truly thankful. Now that we have season premieres in our rear view mirror for season 1, we are already at work on season 2, and when season 2 premieres, we are tightening up the podcast format to make it even more enjoyable for you to get your bite-sized strategies each month. But wait, there's more. In addition to finding Small Plates on Apple Podcasts, season 2 will debut on Spotify as well. So it's going to be Apple and Spotify, and as if that couldn't be more fun, you can tune into Spotify right now to hear the music features that we have introduced to you over the past year. Now you can enjoy the music from this podcast without having to listen to me drone on, and that, my friend, is a win. Look for the playlist called Small Plates Podcast Music Features. Oh, and if you're more of an IG guy or gal, the Small Plates Podcast is also now on Instagram. Bam! Give us a follow for updates on season 2 premieres and music, musicians' resources, and inspiration in between our premieres. And there's a link to the new playlist on Spotify right there in our IG bio, so give us a follow. Okay, one of the topic suggestions that we received recently caught my attention. And to paraphrase it now, a musician asked, should I be paying for playlist promotion and why? And I thought, wow, yeah, that's probably a very real question you've asked yourself too. But could we expand that question outward in scope to include all of the other kinds of pay-to-play opportunities that musicians read about or that they're offered as they guide their way through their career development? And very often they do that on limited budgets. So if you'll indulge me 1 second to reflect back to the earliest days of the recorded music business last century, there were plenty of entrepreneurs and musicians that believed that if you threw money at the music industry, you could accelerate a career for someone. DJ Alan Freed and the term payola, for the act of giving a radio disc jockey cash in exchange for having that radio disc jockey play a song on air, well, that came into prominence mid-century, and that model, illegal, unethical, ethical, whatever, it has worked out for a lot of people for a lot of decades. But when wealthy parents have tried to buy their children careers as rock stars, man, those tales of private planes and massive recording studio buildings turned into nothing but brutal stories of 7-figure money losses on mom and dad's tax return spreadsheet. In short, we can start to talk about how there have always been ways to use money to effectively game the system, and there always have been ways you're sure to waste all that money too. Personally, I think that's because whenever someone is looking for a quick and easy way to achieve a dream, There will always be a sketchy character at hand to try to take advantage of them. The music business is not known to be fertile ground for players who are steeped in character and fair business practices. I don't think I need to prove that. You've heard all of the stories about the bad label deals, the manager who embezzled millions, the producer who stole samples, and on and on. So there's just one strategy for you today. One. And here it is translated from the Latin title of today's podcast, Caveat Emptor, and that is buyer beware. I'm going to share some insight about offline opportunities and online opportunities, and in both worlds it comes down to nothing more than buyer beware as your strategy today. There is one more piece to that puzzle that I'd like for you to at least note, though, and that is the concept of timing. If you're going to compromise yourself, maybe a little bit, to get to the next right place, the timing of that compromise is of mission-critical importance, and it can determine whether it is an effective effort or wasted money. Hard work and great timing can trump talent any day. So I want you to always factor in your very specific scenario answer to, is this the right time? While you create your strategy of buyer beware. Buyer beware, but also buyer be especially critical of when you decide it's buying time. So, first is Caveat Emptor Online for all the things on your screens. Likes, follows, subscribers, views, streams, and more. That's probably what you're most interested in, right? Second, I have thoughts on Caveat Emptor Offline. All the things without streams like touring, licensing, sync, terrestrial radio airplay, all very important stuff as well. I hope you understand that I cannot give referrals to people or companies that are reputable because I can't vouch for how they may perform on your project any more than I can name names of people and companies I would avoid at all costs for the amount of hate that would come my way for having done that publicly. I'm also not suggesting that the people who do the work I don't necessarily think is helpful are bad people, or that what they do for a living is corrupt, that they are sketchy, or in any way they are incompetent. Suffice it to say, you can and should have these kinds of conversations on Reddit or on Facebook or in a rehearsal space lounge or anywhere else you can find people like yourself that are looking for resources. And you should gather as much anecdotal feedback as you can. Getting help for your online presence is a reasonable thought, but what makes sense and what doesn't? If you hire a marketing, promotion, or advertising agency to help you with some followers or streams or views, it's because you want to expose your music to more people. Who doesn't want more exposure? But if the way those companies achieve those upticks in followers or streams or views is to utilize bots or to make sure you blow up in one of the smallest developed countries on the planet, what exactly is the payoff at the end? Are you trying to impress a romantic interest? Do you want to justify your music aspirations to mom and dad? How about you're trying to attract the attention of a manager or a label? You know, there's rarely been a potential client who has come my way that has not paid for any exposure they can get in the past. And that can mean bots and playlists that drop you faster than they added you, and having the most promising career in a remote country that might not have running water. So if you've made that decision, or if you're about to make it, regretfully, you're in the majority. Don't feel bad. In my experience, there never has been a potential client who said that paying companies that use these methods have brought them real fans. I can't say that it doesn't happen, but I can say that's my experience. The reason is Because in very, very general terms, data doesn't usually reflect interest and engagement. You got spins. Yay. You picked up followers that you cannot know if they are even real people or artificial intelligence. Savage. You're the #1 streaming country artist in the Arctic Circle. You're a legend. Get what I'm saying? Why are any of those things important? Because you want to show them to people like me, who will throw darts at your data and then tell you that you've made my job harder? That my job is now harder because when I'm asked if we want to route a tour through China, I will never be able to know precisely how many of your subscribers in Beijing are bot accounts and how many are real people. It's an extreme example, I know, but I'm trying to make a point. What does it mean to get profile if the profile isn't real or relevant to your own success? Who would appreciate it besides you or your love interest or your family? I mean, really, who does? You do? Get over that. Is someone else you've never met going to follow you forever and ever and ever because of any of one of those developments? Because you're huge in the Arctic Circle? The short answer is that on their own, these kinds of efforts may be fake or they may be real but short-lived. Just those two things. Fake or real but short-lived. And they should not be done isolated from other ways of developing your career if you choose to do them. And just to jump back a second, when I take on a new client, we spend countless hours backtracking to determine how corrupted their data has become by recruiting good-hearted people and quick-buck companies that have not brought real value or real interest to the artist's career. When I investigate referrals to my office, I always assume that a percentage of their data is corrupt because at some point in the past, they have bought something that isn't real. That should be telling. If you spent that money to impress me, you wasted your money. And you've wasted your money twofold. First, if you're not still aggressively reaching out to the people you did manage to reach, then they probably don't care about you or your art in any notable way. And then secondly, the people who understand how gaming the system works realize that you spent money trying to game the system instead of trying to build your career. Think about that. So for me, and then obviously for my clients, how does online promo work without inviting incorrect geographic data into your permanent artist history, without buying the temporary attention of so-called decision makers, without creating views that didn't ever and won't ever happen? In a word, advertise. If you're talking to 5 marketing companies you see in blogs or on websites that you visit regularly as a musician, and you're interested in hiring someone or a company that promises to help you grow your career, my advice is to pay more attention to those who are discussing terms and phrases like pixels, lookalikes, test marketing, ad budgets, conversion ratios, cost per click. These people are talking about the actual business of developing careers without any shortcuts and without the compromises that I have just described to you. And this goes for everything I can imagine at the moment if a screen is involved in reaching others to build your career. Advertising is what those sponsored posts are about on your feed, in your stories, and it hinges on the concept of gathering insightful data that will help you to gather even more insightful data until that shit starts to snowball in a way that you begin to wield tremendous power over your own career, that you can predict who your most likely audience is by a lot of different measurements. From age, gender identity, location, income, recent concert ticket purchases, artist you thought you should tour with, to artists you know 100% you should tour with. And that is how the big boys play ball here, my friend. So what about all of the opportunities you can quote-unquote buy that don't involve screens? What about that first sync placement in a film? Or that opening act gig in front of a big audience? Or buying editorial coverage? Advertorial, it's called, in magazines. And by the way, there are magazines that only offer advertorial, in fact. And then, of course, there is radio. Not satellite radio, but the age-old AM and FM that we call terrestrial radio. This is really where the idea of timing I mentioned comes into play more than ever, because these kinds of offline promotional buy-ins and buy-ons can be a reasonable expense if it's the right opportunity at the right time. If we're talking about pay-to-play in the sync world, and that's when your song gets used in television or in film for the most part, there's a potentially substantial payout if your song gets exposed to that many people. Aside from the fact that some of the audience will make note of your song as something they liked, even if that is in passing. And there are fees that range from a few $100s to a few $100,000, depending on the project you're aligning with. A recognized music supervisor who helps to choose music offerings for film and television told me recently that, yes, there are examples of untrustworthy, unscrupulous executives there too. And they could cite some examples when a music supervisor who is paid by the film or television producers in the form of a flat fee was actually charging musicians to present their tracks on the front end. In essence, collecting money from both parties for being positioned in the middle. My recommendation is to keep your money in your pocket if someone says they will pitch you for film and television, and instead let them take a percentage of whatever money they are able to collect when they land that sync placement for you. That's how business is done. When it comes to media coverage in the form of advertorial, it's a very personal choice to put that into your marketing mix. Finding the right kind of newspaper or magazine with the exact right kind of audience is the most fundamental piece of this puzzle. If you cannot be assured that you won't hit exactly the kinds of potential fans you must reach, then it's probably safe to set this aside for a bit and come back to it later. Advertorial means that you can control the exact message, and that has power in it for sure. You never know what a journalist is going to say about you, but you decide what is printed here. Is this a big piece of every strong marketing plan? Definitely not. And there are more examples of artists and managers who don't use this than who do. I just thought I should mention it briefly for certain countries where this is more common. Now, on the tour buy-in, it's important to note that every artist who wants the opportunity to perform in front of an audience, who bought tickets to see a bigger, more reputable touring act, I mean, that's the dream of every artist. And what's not to like, right? Typically, headliners choose supporting acts that can help them fill the room. That's an aha. Either because they are a local act with a local following, or because they have a manager or agent or a label that is working in common with them. But to buy onto a tour means that instead of the headlining act paying you a salary to open the tour for them, warming up the audience as the venue fills with people, you're actually paying the headlining act to access this opportunity. The fees can sometimes be way out of reach. And the pitfalls? They're always staggering. Who has money to pay to play live? If you're opening in 10,000-seat venues, assuming every gig is a sold-out show, how many seats will be filled when you play if no one knows your name or your music yet? Could it be that the tour isn't sold out and you're only performing for 2,000 people on your best night of the tour and most of them aren't paying attention to you? Will you have decent sound and support to make sure that you make the best first impression possible? Do you think it's going to help you get an agent to say that you bought onto a tour that did well? Will that agent believe you had something to do with that, other than reducing the financial risk of the headliner? If buying onto a tour was a smart idea for you, when would it be the smartest idea to implement it? You're going to have to answer that one yourself. In my opinion, tour buy-ons have become an industry thing because of artists who were wanting to bypass the very long and difficult process of building a fan base on their own. So buyer beware is definitely my warning for you here. Finally, radio promotion. That very first pay-to-play I mentioned today, DJ Alan Freed, it's a very difficult game to play, even if you're the best in the business, even if you have a track record, even if you have money. In the world of popular FM radio stations in big American cities, breaking a song onto the charts can cost the label and ultimately the artist millions of dollars. However, non-commercial radio, which is public radio and college radio stations in America, typically located below 92 on the FM dial, they don't take advertising, and they don't play music in the same kind of repetitive fashion. So since the payoff is way lower, so is the cost. You can hire someone to distribute your single to different specialty shows and then follow up to reach them to find out if they decided to listen to it, and if they did, if they liked it enough to play it. It is a long, arduous process that can result in you paying someone for a report that says that after 3 months of work and some of your money, they didn't ever find out if some stations played it or not. Or if they played it more than a few times. Or if it ever got a response from their listeners. Or if they even remembered getting it in the first place. Be sure you go for the most reputable of non-commercial radio promoters in the business, because they're on the phone with these stations regularly to get the answers to these questions. That said, without a lot of other marketing efforts to coincide with a non-commercial or public radio campaign, you're likely to find that paying to play might have been about as productive as just doing it yourself. Thank you for your kind attention today. Tune in for Season 2 of Small Plates, when we will dive deeper into many of the subjects we have introduced over the past year and develop some new conversations around topics like musicians' revenue streams, predictive A&R, and more. And if you were inspired today by Caveat Emptor, you can help your musician friends and those that help them by choosing to like, comment, and share. And if you have topic ideas you'd like to see discussed here, or in the case of today's subject matter, if you have hate mail for me based on the hatchet job I just did to so many players in the biz today, please drop me an email to smallplatesuggestionbox@gmail.com.
You've been listening to Small Plates, bite-sized career strategies for musicians, other creators, and their collaborators, hosted by music manager and veteran career strategist, R. Wayne Martin. Small Plates is a monthly subscription podcast produced by M3 New York City. Click subscribe to receive new Small Plates insights and strategies on the first Friday of each month, only on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening.